and maybe we can go around and introduce people.
Yeah.
Brendan and Julie Raymond Jacoby. Okay, they were the people that wrote the response, brought up the issue initially with GBOS members. Robin Ward is our real estate and heritage land bank. The drawer, I believe, in that picture.
No, actually wasn't.
Okay.
No.
And me.
Well, that was going to say it was Kelly.
Okay, so they had to explain all that. And then you must be with Nordic?
I am. I'm Deb Essex. I'm the president of the Gerber Nordic Ski Club.
Okay. And this is actually our third meeting on this. More facts were being brought up. And it started out for everybody as a simple request for advisory opinion that Kyle and I filed. There's this issue brewing, so we just use the ethics board. We don't want attorneys involved. Let's just go to the ethics board and see if we can resolve it sort of informally. So Kyle and I filed it, and that's the only reason why because we didn't want it to escalate any further and provide. And it's uniquely useful. It's our ethics code and these various organizations.
Okay. Well, I think everybody's informed except you, Terry. And do you have any specific, after reading that, specific questions to these different people?
Or Jack. Jack might want to jump in as sort of a lead.
Well, I think that the reason we were asking for more information was the nature of ownership or other interests that were being gained by passing the proposal, like either by GNSC, like it's who brought the proposal to GBOS, who was the applicant for the process, and then what interest, if any, via leases or use being permitted would then happen because of the application or the proposal being forwarded on to the assembly. I think that was kind of the nature of
So
what we were looking for.
Did this start out? It started out that what came before GBOS was an application, or what was the initial action that was being considered for which you believe there should have been further disclosure?
It was a resolution of support for a trails project proposed by the club.
And the support the resolution would have been issued by GBOS.
Yes, to move it forward to HLB and assembly and the other approvals that were needed after that.
And so the who brought it before GBOS was who? Do you know?
Technically,
Yeah, it came up from Trails Committee.
Okay.
But I think overall it supported the Gerwood Nordic Ski Club's ambition to build this trail.
Jack, I think that's where we got interested. Okay, so the end result is Nordic built a trail. Are they under contract? Do they have property interest with the city? Is there anything further than is simply a volunteer group to which many people belong? And we're not sure that matters, but we wanted to know. Are you under contract with the city? Who's going to pay for the improvements? Is it land use?
We would be a lease holder with HLB. Easement holder with HLB.
Okay, so you're going to grant them an easement, which is a use. They're allowed to use a specific piece of property, in this case trails, right?
Correct.
It would be a public trail easement.
And then you would not only construct it, but maintain it?
Correct.
And the money for this would be coming from where?
For the construction?
Yeah.
Mostly from grants.
Okay, grants from us, from MOA?
No.
No.
No. I've, in the past, federal or state grants, private money, and some business, none of which have been in Gerwood in the past. I'm trying to use a past project as an example.
So not a grant between Nordic and Heritage or Real Estate Services?
Correct.
And so the resolution, by the way, whatever happened would have been theoretically from GBOS, then goes up to Heritage?
Land Bank. Well, it would go beside Heritage Land Bank because GBOS is advisory to the Assembly, just as Heritage Land Bank Commission is advisory to the Assembly.
So with a positive resolution, does that support granting an easement?
Correct.
So that was the carrot at the end of the day.
That is correct. As we would go to any community council For easements that are granted through Heritage Land Bank, GBOS, we would go to GBOS as in the community council for
And
supporting
so
that
you,
area.
as real estate services, then bring it before the assembly for public process because it's a disposal of municipal property.
That is
Disposal being you're granting an interest in land. So it had to go, so that's where it would have ended up, is before the assembly.
Right.
For the easement, okay. See, we were just involved in sort of a dispute at a lower level and couldn't figure out, well, where are these other dots, where are they headed? Because that might affect the materiality of the disclosure issue. Do you want to
And on the
speak about
Girdwood
that?
board, there were Nordic Club, Ski Club members, is that, okay. And there was no disclosure that they were members of the club, is that?
Not formally, it sounds like.
Okay.
So it would be helpful to know, can you just, if you would, just explicitly kind of laying out cost of membership, what membership entails, what benefits, if any, there are for membership in GNSC, and then we would just get like a nice clear parameter of what the interests are.
Okay, so I'll start with saying we modeled it the same as every club in Alaska. And Alaska is the one place in the world where Nordic skiing is free. It doesn't exist in any other state or any other country. So these memberships are created. So when you give a donation, it's all donation based, that then helps pay for grooming, maintenance, signage. So our memberships go from a $15 basic membership to a $40 family or $100 for a business. These are all suggested donation amounts. And so in return for that, they receive a newsletter with upcoming events. They receive discounts possibly on adult ski lessons.
Who would provide those lessons? Is that
It's all volunteer.
Okay.
No, it's all volunteer community members. So far, we haven't started the discount program because we run it through as a volunteer basis through the Fort Valley Community School. So we maintained a separation there so that we're not, so that we remain donation based. The members are non-voting members, all of our members in the Nordic Club, which is different from Anchorage Ski Club. They, trying to go down the,
Actually, when you say non-voting, so when an issue comes up, how do you decide to go forward? A consensus?
board consensus, yes,
So the board is run by a board of directors.
correct.
Okay. And you're the president.
I am.
Okay. And these are all members on the board are from Girdwood.
They are.
Yeah. Okay.
About how many members do you have?
Changes every day. I'm trying to think, so there's, I'm like, right now we have 160 households, so I would say right around 300 members.
300 members.
I'd have to-
Is your sense like most of them are Girdwood residents?
Correct.
How is the board selected?
By application and then voted on by the board.
By the board itself?
Yeah.
So members are non-voting.
Correct.
Non-voting. It's a board. Board.
Does anyone know what is the population of Girdwood?
2,000.
2,000. Oh, thank you.
5,000 if everybody lived there. 3,000 full-time.
3,000?
5,000 if everybody lived there. We have a lot of second homes.
Yeah, sure, right. But 2,000, you think 2,000?
2,000 full-time.
Full-time.
Just about, rough.
Okay, thanks. And the resolution, so the resolution was for a trail project that was being run by the ski club. Is that the idea?
It really wasn't, right? It's a resolution that,
It's in support of issuing an easement for a public trail easement.
that
Polar Trail easement. And was part of the idea, I mean, was it part of the resolution or part of the idea that this easement was going to be used by the Nordic Ski Club
It
to
will be
build?
issued to them.
It was issued, the easement was going to be issued to them?
The easement, if approved by the assembly, would be issued to them.
Okay.
Do we know what the language of the easement would be, or at least roughly like the purpose, or?
It would be a general public trail access easement,
Okay.
specifically for trails.
probably non-exclusive of.
Yeah.
a multi-use trail?
We haven't actually done the easement yet, so
Yeah.
I don't know, it could be.
Non-exclusive, Ted, I think other people can walk over
Can
it.
walk
and
it.
they can walk their dogs on it or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not exclusive.
It's not only for skiers.
No, it is not. We
And for
have,
summertime, it'll be used.
for walkers, there's,
And Ted, even more importantly, it's not exclusive to their skiers, any skiers.
Yeah,
can
anybody
use it.
can
Yeah,
walk
just
on it.
Yeah.
Do members gain any kind of benefit whatsoever in terms of access to the trails or parking or anything that an ordinary citizen or anyone who goes to those ski trails would have? Okay, so the access would be
it is
totally
Public.
universal,
It's
right?
free to the public.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to point something out, just because something you had just said, I thought it might not have been clear, but the process starts with the Nordic Club sort of applies/proposes the project to the Gerber bodies. It starts that way, and then it starts at trails and then works its way up. Something you had said, and I wasn't sure if that was clear, that it is a private club applicant, that's how it starts, it doesn't start at the, public body, it's just.
Oh, no, that's the goal.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps one other point, like Robin said, this project hasn't been, it's still in the process of going forward, but if you look at past projects that have gone through the same process, for example, like gravel is given to the applicants. In a previous Nordic Ski Club project, they did not have to pay for gravel. It was given to them through HLB and another group in town that's building trails as well. The gravel is public resources given to them, so it's not strictly an easement through lands. There's other things that go along with it as well. Typically, this one hasn't been decided yet.
This one has not been decided. In a previous trail, that is correct. This one, we have not gotten to that point where there would be any kind of a donation. It's premature to determine whether or not.
Okay. And the gravel from these previous, it was donated by a private entity or
They were
was?
allowed to harvest off of our property. So
Oh,
that
I
always
see.
ran
Oh,
as
I
for
see.
construction.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I don't often think about harvesting gravel, but it's in Alaska. I was going to say that's a very Alaska phenomenon,
We
right?
call
Yeah.
that gold, yeah.
Yeah,
In
gold.
Alaska, or in Anchorage at least, it's gold.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So, Jack, did you need any more questions about membership or, it sounds like,
No, it sounds like there's not a fixed price. It's a suggested donations at various levels, like personal versus family or business. And then other than a newsletter and potential discounts on volunteer lessons.
Right, but
Okay.
again, that wouldn't be through us. That was something that maybe the school was gonna offer members of the community. We were just gonna write the newsletter to announce the classes when they were
Okay, so it's not really.
suggested. Not through us, but I just
Okay.
wanted to throw that out there in case someone saw a newsletter coming from us. It's actually gonna be run through the school. We always were the avenue for announcing when Nordic ski events,
Okay.
races, Anchorage events are happening in our area.
For NSAA, that members get kind of discounts on racing entry fees and things like that. I wondered if you guys had similar types of, I don't know if there's any races to it.
We don't at this time because we want to support the other nonprofits and groups, so we decided to let them have that and we don't want to discount or gain any additional money. That way we let our people be a member and get a little moose pin and sticker and support the trails.
I mean, there are intangible benefits, I suppose you could say, however, I think this is something you pointed out last time, which is sort of, I think, at the root of part of the conflict regarding the issue, which is that, for example, there are certain people who don't want a trail or burden to trails through a particular area because that's how they use that area at a certain time. So there's intangible benefits in the sense of it's distributed unevenly through the community that, you receive a benefit if you're the type of person who wants to groom or wants groomed trails as opposed to people who don't want that.
Right. Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, yeah, so what is the adverse effect? So if this easement is, the easement, you know, if it's granted and the project goes through, the winners are cross-country skiers. Who are the losers? I mean, so who are the people who are adversely affected?
I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I would say, you know, people who prefer a non-groomed experience or just don't want a trail cut through an area that's either, you might call it sort of wilderness-like.
Sure.
Or people who, I mean, that would be the main interest, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, people who like to go there for solitude, to watch birds, to watch wildlife experience, to not see human construction around them.
Okay, right.
Like highly developed type trails.
Right. So this is an area. I mean, so this is an area that's otherwise relatively accessible, and people are using this area
Yeah,
now.
there's
There's
primitive
use trails
that
or
run
something
through
like
it.
that. Okay.
People are aware of the area. It's considered by some people to be one of the most pristine, beautiful parts of the valley. And there's just one thing I wanted to say too, just because I know it came up at the first meeting, and it's probably not relevant to your discussions, but some people have kind of maybe implied that the reason we brought this issue to GBOS, which ended up with you, is because we're personally not in favor of this trail or this project. And that's true or not, but I just wanted to make it clear that for us, this is very much a process issue. We're very concerned about process in Gerwood and how decisions are made. So while the two are definitely connected, this is not a personal out to get anybody kind of situation for us. We're very concerned about how GBOS makes decisions, makes disclosures, and addresses these kinds of things in general across issues.
I saw that in your email. Yeah, so thank you for addressing that. Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah, so that's good. So this is sort of for you. This is an example of what maybe is a broader problem of people not properly disclosing potential conflicts and things like that. Okay.
In fact, the devil's advocate a little bit, if, that's what the term is doing. So had the different GBOS people just fully disclosed that they were a member of this club, nonprofit, that would have been enough, or is it really your dissatisfaction that an entity like GBOS can be really stacked full of Nordic supporters?
Well, I think we addressed that a little bit too in our response, which is that, you know, we're not saying, we're leaving it to you guys to determine if there is a conflict that merits some other action on the part of GBOS. So we're not trying to determine ourselves if there is a conflict. What bothered us in this process was that there was no discussion before this vote, no disclosure before the vote, and you know, if they had disclosed and discussed, not in a flippant way, which that's, you know, subjective, but it's happened in the past, if they had discussed it in a serious manner, come to a decision as a body that there was no conflict, I mean, we would have had no cause to submit this to them, you know, this request to them to address this.
So it is two parts of it. So one is disclosure, adequate disclosure, and then the second is, given that disclosure, really should there have been a declared conflict of interest?
Right. Yeah, I think the other issue is more just I mean, sure, we have the issue of, like, I wouldn't necessarily call it on GBOS stacking or but meeting attendance or membership. At the sort of, I think they're called the self-organizing type bodies where it's basically whoever kind of shows up. That's a concern, but it's more of that's probably like a general civic concern, and I don't have any sort of idea for how you deal with that or you don't deal with that. That's sort of a totally, for me, separate issue from the sort of process level issue.
In terms of the second stage, the question of is there a substantial conflict? I don't know if you've had a chance to read our code, and if not, what's your general sense in this particular case? Do you think there was a substantial conflict, or was it it's probably something they should have disclosed and talked about, but at the end of the day, being a member of the club is not quite enough to make it a substantial conflict? Or in your view, no, this was a conflict and the people who were members should have recused themselves?
I personally believe that it was a conflict. And I think because what it really comes down to for me is how Girdwood's public lands are being used and who's being served and not served by that. And there's very much a divide in the community over these issues. And so it's not, which, I mean, even if it was a very small minority of people, it would still be a concern to me. But there is a divide in the community over how our public lands are used. And the supervisors are aware of that. And I believe that voting in favor of that trail as a Nordic Club member has very specific things behind it, that you're preferring one use over another because you're a Nordic skier. And it's okay to have those views, certainly, but I do think they need to be disclosed and discussed. And for me, those less tangible benefits that Brendan mentioned earlier do make it rise to that level for me personally.
And there is too, and I don't know how much this is coming up, but I think it's worth pointing out that there was a separate conflict issue as well. That's with this, and I'm not sure if that was actually put on your plate or not. I never really kind of knew if that other conflict, being employment-based conflict as well from the other supervisor. That if you were to add, I don't know if that's something we were going to speak
I
to.
think that was in the short. Why don't you just refresh our memory?
I mean, there's one of the supervisors who voted for the trail also didn't disclose any potential conflicts. And yeah, as an employee of Alyeska Resort, Alyeska Resort wrote a letter of support on behalf of the owner and the resort, one letter, but it stated that in there, and that was in the packet that went before GBOS as well, and that also is part of our concern that was never disclosed or discussed. But and if you were to ask me the same question again about that, I would say that yes, that also seems to me to be a very clear process issue as well as conflict.
As a conflict.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that would be because Alyeska has an interest in developing the Nordic ski trails because they advertise, hey, one of the things that you can do while you're here is ski these great groomed.
I don't know particular.
ski trails,
I would
right?
assume it's just general support for a certain type of recreation development. That's what I
Okay.
would assume.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know the rationale.
And of course, that supervisor as an employee would hold a different interest in different type of interest than this more general interest we're talking about in terms of volunteer work. With a different analysis.
Okay, is the trail on the trail, is that belong to Heritage Land Bank?
Well, we could only do an easement
Right.
on Heritage Land.
Yeah,
So
but-
once in a while, they do go on to U.S. Forest Service or other land. But they
Private.
would have to secure their rights to use that under an easement from another
From
land.
another, but, okay. Is there any on the board of directors, is there anybody from Goodwood Board of Supervisors on the board? Have you ever been on the board that you know of?
I guess just out of curiosity, how many of the board of supervisors are club members?
I think what I remember was stated that 2 had paid their dues and 1 hadn't, but he had been paid dues in the past. He just hadn't paid his due that year.
Out of how many people?
Out of 5.
I think you became a member during the previous earlier parts of the votes. This process took like 2 years, right? But then by the time the second one rolled around,
I don't know the exact details.
But I don't
He just
know.
mentioned that in passing. and-
So we'll call it 2.5. We'll call it 2.5. Okay. Thanks. Well, I don't have anything else.
I don't either. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you all taking the time to come down here. I mean, it's an interesting issue, and I know it's a drive up from Girdwood when you could have been skiing the trails, right? So thank you for taking the time and coming up. I really appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
And anybody can use the trails.
Anybody.
They're absolutely
50% of our members don't ski,
Public, okay.
you know?
There's no
We
membership.
groom all of them, yeah, not just our trails.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
Everybody.
Thanks a lot.
What happens next?
Well, we'll deliberate and we'll continue to think about. I mean, strictly speaking, the way this process has worked out is that the code allows the city's ethics officer to ask the board to offer advice about conduct issues, within the city. And so the question is, strictly speaking, we'll be offering Deanna's advice about how she should be advising at the ethics officers, how disclosures should be taking place and things like that. So, strictly speaking, this is not an investigation of a complaint, right? Though, and again, my understanding is that you're aware that you could do that, right? And so there is a complaint process, and if you chose, you could do it that way. So, strictly speaking, this is not an investigation into a possible violation, but this particular issue, this particular case could be used as an illustrative case. And it sounds like maybe that's your concern, your ultimate goal, as an illustrative case, one way or the other, saying, look, here's the way disclosure should take place. There are some gray area judgment calls that need to be made about disclosure, and I imagine we'll probably cite this case, like, here's an interesting case to think about, and we'll have to decide, this board will talk about, no, in this case, disclosure wasn't necessary, or no, yeah, they should have disclosed, right, and things like that. So the next step will be deliberation by the board. We'll write up a draft, we'll think about the draft, and ultimately we'll offer. It'll be a public document that'll go on the web, but it'll also be offered to Dee as the ethics officer, our advice to her about how the code is interpreted in terms of these disclosure requirements, and that's the advice that she in turn would offer to the board.
It's public guidance, everybody has access to it.
I do want to lastly say, I appreciate your point about good governance and that being your concern. It came through in your emails, both of them. That was obviously a concern. We very much appreciate that. That was very clear and it was obvious, and it's something that we certainly understand and applaud. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks again.